Hi guys, I'm Kiki and I make OC content. I know it's been a minute. By a minute, I mean 6 months. I've been a little bit busy, but we're back, hopefully for good this time. So in this video, I'm going to focus on the background of my SCYTHE OCs and their lore specifically. And near the end, I'll go through some anonymous questions that were submitted to me on my socials. I will have speed paints for art fight attacks I've done so far in the back, and I will include usernames for credit. As a quick background, anyone who's new to my content, SCYTHE is a fictional metal band I made consisting of 4 characters: Minji, the lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist; Josie, the bassist and occasionally other instruments; Cage, the lead guitarist and occasional vocalist; and Dalton, the drummer. Quick side note before I actually get started, I have altered a few details that I shared in the last video. However, it was for the better. I won't be explaining current relationships in this video, but I absolutely will make a follow-up explaining those, as if you've been following me on Artfight, you'll see that I made more OCs to this universe, and I also have a relationship chart that establishes relationships. So that's about it for my intro, and let's get started with backgrounds. Yay! So Minji was born in America on June 23rd, 2000 to 2 Korean parents. And yes, I have dates written down. She had a relatively good childhood, I'd say, and a healthy relationship with her parents, and she was also an only child. Her parents worked a lot, especially during the day, so she stayed at home often, and she kind of had to become independent on her own. Growing up, she was always pretty gifted at school, but mainly because she did what was expected of her. It's not like she was some super genius or whatever, but she was just incredibly stubborn, hardworking, and picked stuff up at a faster rate in comparison to her peers. Minji, from a young age, always felt like she had to be good at everything she could be good at, which inevitably leads to horrible burnout. To Minji, everything was like a race, I feel like. Like, she had to finish quickly, she had to finish in first place. It wasn't like she was being pressured by family or anything either. She just always felt the need to prove herself. So I feel like Minji got into music at a really young age, and she started off with guitar lessons. So she started off with an acoustic guitar. Then she got bored of it eventually because she became really good at it, and it was just like I guess it just felt bland. And in high school is when she discovered the electric guitar, thanks to Cage. Cage and Minji met during Cage's junior year when he was around 16, and Minji's freshman year when she was around 14 in a math class, because, like I said before, she's pretty smart, she's pretty hardworking, so she made her way up there. And she's a bit more advanced in terms of math compared to Cage. Sorry. Cage practically taught her what she needed to know, like the basics and stuff, and they bonded over music. A pattern you're gonna see throughout this entire video. They stayed in touch after Cage's graduation, considering their little age gap that they had. So in high school, Minnie tried dating guys and girls, but she quickly got over it. Like, she didn't really feel a spark, and she found she really only dated because everybody else was doing it, and that she didn't really have an interest in it. I wonder what this could mean, guys. She didn't have a label for it at the time, but Minnie is Arrow Ace. So it was in Minji's senior year, when she was around 17, that she met Josie, who was around 14 at the time and was in her freshman year, through an after-school tutoring program. Minnie was Josie's tutor. Josie was shy, somehow shyer than she is like currently, because Josie is a very anxious person. And Minji's mission basically was to get her to speak up more, which helped a little bit. And they became pretty close friends. So Josie was in a garage band in high school and played a few different things. So Minnie went to her occasional gigs and sometimes even band practices, even after like graduation. And she'd bring Cage along with her, and that's how Josie and Cage met. After graduating high school, Minji tried out college, but when she got there, she found out that she didn't really have an interest in anything. Like, she didn't want to be a doctor, she didn't want to be a lawyer, she didn't really, like, have interest in anything you could use a fucking college degree for. Like, she worked so hard for so long to discover she didn't really have a plan. So, she dropped out of college, like, almost immediately. She moved in with Cage, who had his own apartment at the time, for some time, just to figure herself out. She worked as a server for most of this time period, like, this little gap period. And that same year is when she met Dalton at his job. And naturally, they ended up becoming like pretty fast friends, as they discovered they had similar likes in music and such. So she thought about forming a band eventually. I guess it was just like a spur of the moment thing. It's like, I know instruments, my friends know instruments, why not, right? So one day, after deciding she didn't want to be a server for the rest of her life, or work in retail the rest of her life, or anything like that, she brought up the idea to Cage, who actually really encouraged it, because The guy loves his fucking guitar, and he volunteered to be a part of it. And Minji asked Dalton and Josie, as she knew they had experience with instruments, and that's basically how she formed SCYTHE. Dalton was born. This is like the fourth time I've had to record this section because my AC keeps turning. I'm so sorry about the audio quality. My AC keeps turning on and it's screwing me over. Anyways, Dalton was born in Birmingham, England on October 3rd, 1998. His childhood wasn't the best, like, at all. He was raised on the Worcester side of Birmingham, and he had a lower income family and also had no siblings, so he was an only child. But he was 100% a mama's boy. I like to think he had a really, really good relationship with his mom, and also, Dalton's a natural strawberry blonde, which he gets from his mom. Believe it or not, he's not his silver hair is not natural. That shit has dyed. I don't know if it's hard to tell or not, but, his dad was a drinker, like, pretty much always, like, throughout his entire life. It started off pretty tame, I feel like, and then it just progressively got worse, and he was a little bit, like, physically abusive at first as well. Dalton's mom passed away sometime after his 8th birthday, so he's not very fond of his birthdays, and his father's drinking only worsened after Dalton's mother's death, so things got pretty tough for Dalton, and he tried to stay away from home as much as he could. He struggled a lot in school, mainly because he was always dozing off, sleeping, or just couldn't pay attention, and all of this was almost entirely due to his home life. He wasn't ever really bullied in high school, though, because he was a taller and bigger kid, and he also really only hung out with his childhood best friend, Rowan, which is a character that I added and I will talk about in the next video, I promise. I lost my spot. Oh, I think this is around the time, like, high school is around the time he figured out he was into guys, or I don't know. Honestly, I feel like he always just kind of knew, but never really, like, acknowledged it or paid attention. Like, oh, I'm not really that into girls, but, like, whatever, you know? Not in an internalized homophobia kind of way, but in, like, okay, I like guys, like, what now? And I also don't think he ever really dated in high school because it wasn't some priority. Like, he dealt enough with his dad, who in hindsight probably would have kicked him out for it if he found out he was, like, with a guy. So his dating life started more towards his last year of high school and later in his adult years. I want to say he discovered drumming sometime in his preteens. I know I'm jumping around a lot in the timeline, but this is how I wrote my script. So the guy had a lot of pent-up frustration. Like, he had an abusive dad at home. He didn't care about school. His mom's dead. So drumming was a pretty good outlet for him, I feel like. And around 16, Dalton joined the British Army, pretty much entirely to get away from his dad. I think that's accurate. My research says you can join the British Army at 16, but don't quote me on that. I was trying to go for accuracy. He got out at around 20 years old. He grabbed his shit and moved to the US with Rowan. They lived together the first few years there, and Dalton got some part-time jobs. Like, I feel like he just worked wherever they would take him because he didn't have, like, a college diploma. I don't even feel like he finished high school. I'm just gonna say he's a dropout, honestly. So he worked retail most of it, as mentioned previously. That's where he met Minji, who was 18 at the time, and Dalton was around 20 at the time, I guess. Minji shopped a lot at the shop he was working for, and she bought a lot of, like, band t-shirts and stuff, so she was a regular, and the shop was mainly empty, so they talked a lot, and they ended up staying in touch after finding out they had similar taste in music. Subtle foreshadowing. Dalton was 21, so kind of like after a year of meeting, when Minji first brought up starting a band, as he'd mentioned having experience with drums at some point. And that's basically Dalton's life up until the point that we're at now, kind of ish. I listened back to my recordings and I feel like I sound like I'm being held at gunpoint. I'm so sorry. I recorded that like 2 days ago. Moving on to Cage, he was born in America on August 14th, 1998 to a black father and a Chinese mother. Like Minji, Cage had a pretty normal childhood for the most part. His father worked a lot while his mother stayed home to take care of him. He bonded with his mother through cooking, as they helped her around the kitchen a lot, and she taught him the majority of the cooking skills that he has now. In his father's free time, he taught Cage how to play the guitar, which is where he gets it from. Cage actually has a little sister. I've never mentioned this before ever. I think I just pulled this out of my ass like last minute, but he has a 10-year age gap with her. So if you've looked at his information, Cage does have OCD and bipolar, which usually go hand in hand with each other from what I've seen. And he got diagnosed with that in his preteens, and it made life a little bit complicated for him, but he tried his best to work with it rather than have it work against him. So in school, Cage didn't really have many close friends, like, at all. People knew them, but they didn't, like, know them, you know? So he was lonely a good portion of his school life. Cage was pretty conscious of his sexuality early on. Like, they discovered that they didn't really have any preferences when it came to the gender of the people they were into. He just liked what he liked. And I want to say, like, his, like, if you've been following, again, he's kind of promiscuous, and in high school was when his promiscuity began. I guess is, like, the fact that nobody really, like I guess they didn't just feel loved by, like, just being themselves, and I guess his body is how they see their value in a way. Like, he knew he could use it to their advantage at a point, and he dated around in high school a lot. Guys, girls, didn't really matter, as long as he felt seen and loved in a way, regardless of how it got accomplished. In his senior year is when he met Minji, as explained before. They became quick friends and stayed in touch after graduating. Post-graduation, Cage didn't even consider college, honestly. School wasn't their thing, as mentioned before. He got an apartment for himself and worked at a club for some time as he was of age. When he would be in college is when he started sleeping around more and dating less, I guess. Less actual, like, romantic connection, more just physical connection, because I guess that's what they grew used to, with a few exceptions here and there. Cage also met Josie during this time and went to her gigs with Minji, and at some point Minji moved in with them, and a little bit after that is when Minji proposed the band idea, to which Cage agreed to almost immediately. Though he did keep his job for some time until the band thing was actually set in stone and they actually had the members to continue. And that's about it for Cage up to the band forming. And finally, Josie. She was born in Canada on April 4th, 2002. She's the youngest. She was adopted as a baby by her two moms, and before she could really walk, the three of them moved to America. I feel like Josie has the best relationship with her parents, at least out of the four of them, and both of her parents worked from home, mostly to take care of Josie as she was growing up. And Josie's family, I will mention, is upper middle class, so she is a little bit well off compared to the other band members. She got a little brother when she was quite young as well, and then a sister later on. So just to recap, Josie has two moms, a younger brother with a 3-year age difference, and a younger sister with a 5-year age difference. I also think it's important to note that, again, if you've paid attention to her character sheets and her information, Josie has autism and was diagnosed with that at a pretty young age. Similarly to Minnie, I like to think her interest in music started off pretty early in her life. Maybe the earliest in this band, and that she was absolutely a band kid her entire school career. Like, she was infatuated with instruments and learning different instruments and stuff like that. I think Josie did decently in school, decently enough to graduate at first. It's not that she didn't particularly like school or that she was dumb or anything. It's more the fact that she focused more on her band classes than she did her actual, like, regular classes. She was always, like, she's definitely the type of kid that was always doodling on schoolwork instead of jotting down notes. So she was also struggling to make friends because of her quiet nature and because she was occasionally picked on. Because Josie has been, like, shy and, like, socially anxious pretty much her entire life. Due to the fact that she isn't... My script is, like, unreadable. I feel like I'm becoming illiterate. This is not good. Okay, due to the fact that she wasn't paying much attention in her classes, matched with the fact that she struggled with social interactions to a degree, she was encouraged to go to some, like, after-school tutoring program by her math teacher. So, grudgingly, she did go, and that's where she met Minji. Josie really admired Minji and invited her to some band practices or gigs that she played, as she was in somebody's garage band at the time. And it was at these gigs that she met Cage, as mentioned again, as Minji would bring him along. Josie actually picked up her slack after her freshman year and ended up graduating earlier than she was meant to, so she graduated at 17. Her original plan was to take a gap year and then sign up for college and major in some kind of graphic design, but ultimately she was asked by Minnie to join a band. So she was taking a gap year, and then she was like, okay, after this I'll go to college, whatever, right? But then she was approached by Minji, and then that's when the whole band idea came up. And then, despite how reckless it might have seemed to just, like, drop everything and follow a dream like starting a band, Josie accepted with the support of her parents, and SCYTHE was formed. Like, that sounded corny, so let me shut the fuck up. So now that I'm done with explaining their backgrounds and such, I'm gonna answer some questions that I was asked anonymously. The first of which being, what hobbies outside of music do any SCYTHE members have? I'm gonna start off with Josie. Her main hobbies are art and graphic design. She would also, I feel like, handle or at least have control over band design stuff like merch, albums, stuff like that. I know this is kind of relating to the band in a way, but instruments, learning new instruments, she absolutely loves learning new instruments, and I feel like she already knows like a shit ton of them. Like, that's her biggest fixation. Moving on to Cage, his hobby I feel like would be baking and cooking. Like I said before, he's a pretty good cook, I'd say, but I feel like he'd like baking a lot more because he finds it more fun and fulfilling. Like, yeah, cooking's good or whatever, but baking's more rewarding. Because he learned the cooking from his mom and the baking by himself, so it's kind of special to them because, one, they're really good at it, and two, they learned it by themselves, so it's like his own little thing. Then I feel like Dalton's hobby would kind of be weightlifting, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a gym bro because his arms are like all he really focuses on, and only when he feels like it as well. Like, at least like once or twice a week maybe. Like, he has really well built arms, but he's also kind of fat. So like, he has like a chubby build. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, by the way. Also, I feel like he'd know how to sew. Mainly, like, I feel like he'd mainly use it for like patches and stuff, but he grew up with a pretty like rough childhood, like I said before, so he had to learn skills like that. I feel like currently though, like, it's something that he would enjoy. Like, he actually enjoys sewing, and he's good with his hands because he has good coordination because he's a drummer, you freak. I'm not implying anything else. He's good at sewing and he's good at drumming. Anyways, I feel like Minji's hobby would be scrapbooking. Like, it'd be her way to like de-stress and keep her mind off of things because, I mean, she's constantly busy, so she needs stuff to help her unwind eventually. And I'd imagine she has like thick ass scrapbooks and like a shit ton of them. And I feel like this is a hobby that she's had since her teenage years, and she is the type of person to have drawers dedicated to markers, stickers, shit like that. And as a little side hobby, I feel like reading, maybe like psychology books and stuff like that, I feel like is something that she'd be interested in. The next question was, who is the most gullible? Within SCYTHE, just focusing on the 4 main members, I would absolutely say Josie. Mainly because, like I said before, she's shy and very socially anxious. She could very well be consciously gullible. Like, she's not gullible because she doesn't necessarily know she's being messed with or whatever. She's just not fond of confrontation. You could be fucking with her and, like, she would go along with it because what is she gonna say, you know? Okay, so last question. Do you have any examples of songs that SCYTHE's music sounds like? I do. Okay. In my brain, SCYTHE would be, like, industrial metal, kind of. I know their outfits don't give it. I'm not a poser, I promise. But also, I feel like it could be like some heavier stuff like death metal because I really like death metal. So in the industrial sense, I would want them to sound something like Jenna Torturers. Holy shit, I love them so bad. Specifically songs like Machine Love or like House of Shame. And in the other sense, like the heavier sense or like just general metal, I'd go with something along the lines of Napalm Death. Really basic, but I fucking love them. And song examples from them would be, my AC turned off again, this is a miracle. Some songs from them would be like Stigmatized, maybe the whole Scum album as a whole, actually. Heavy on the drums. Anyways, I did make a playlist for songs that I think they'd sound like. There's not a lot, just enough to give a basic idea, I think. And I will leave the link in the description if anybody's like interested in listening to it at all. Okay, I'm really surprised if anybody like managed to make it this far into the video. That's about it for SCYTHE members and their background and the questions. In my next video, I will discuss their relationships with each other and with the side characters that I've made, because there's 9 in total now, including the SCYTHE members, but there's 9 characters in total for this like world now. And if you want to ask any questions or add any suggestions for any videos, I do have a link to my NGL. You can send me anonymous messages. You can find this link in the description of this video, my TikTok highlight for it, or my Instagram, both in my bio and in a highlight that I have for it. It's just a link that you press. Feel free to comment your thoughts, or again, any questions I can answer in a future video. Thank you so much for watching. I am very grateful for the amount of people that have watched my videos and liked them. Like, I genuinely cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for 900 subscribers. That's like insane to me, considering I've only posted 1 other video. But I really love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one that I hopefully won't take another 6-month break for. Bye bye.